So we are in front of the Telephone Museum here in Cle Elum, and we are getting ready to go have some more fun. Yes, this is what telephone booths looked like in the old days. And they had doors, which was wonderful, and they had ventilation because they had doors, and you'd get really hot in there otherwise. They are tight, and yes, you would have to wait. Have been a local switchboard or something inside a big hotel potentially. A butter stamp. The first set combining a receiver and transmitter that could be held in one hand. This is actually a pretty interesting place. I don't know as much as I should about the telephone, but we're about to find out. First commercial telephone. Interesting. Leased by a Boston banker to make a line between his house and his office. All communication was telegraph. Ooh, the first printed telephone directory, 1878. Telephones spread pretty quickly because they were an amazing invention. It also was the first time people who had moved far, far away could actually communicate directly with their family by voice. So it brought a lot of families that had been split up back together again in that regard.
This was like wishful thinking in the end.
The picture phone, yes, exactly. I guess we have that, but in a different way. I know they showed that at the 62 Seattle World's Fair. The picture phone was this new idea. And of course, as soon as they got rid of the bell system monopoly, then we actually did get things like that. That must have been for the people who worked for Pacific Telephone or Pacific Bell or whatever it was. Flip phone, see how far we've come.
Well, flip phones are back now.
That's what I hear.
Yeah, I found someone who had one, and you can use the screen when it's flipped, and you can use it bigger when it's open.
Oh, see, that's nice for the extra screen space. But here are the first cell phones. It's like the size of a brick. See Erica phones in antique stores a lot, and there's a good example there. They got a really nice selection of various phones over time. The 202 was a very famous 1930s model where it wasn't a candlestick anymore and it had the dial attached. Direct dialing was not something people had for a long time. And then these are the very famous 302s that replaced it in various colors. 202s were the first phones to come in colors other than black. But the telephone company wasn't real anxious to make a lot of improvements on phones because you had to rent the phone. So they made them really well, but they didn't really update them very often. And these led to the 500, which is the famous one a lot of us grew up with. There's a 1949 model 500. And the wall phone, I remember getting tied up in the cord of the wall phone at my house with my mother many times as a child. Ah, here we go. Birth of the touch tone. Introduced at the Seattle World's Fair, but was not operational. And notice what they don't have. It does not have pound, and it does not have the star key. If you find these early phones that don't have the pound sign and the star key, they're typically worth about $200 to $300 because that was a very short-lived thing, and then they invented those keys, and so you don't see them very often without. Bob Newhart's desk phone. We'll miss him. He just passed on, actually. In the 19-teens, you have lots of desk set phones that don't have any dials because you had to go through the operator. So you basically just crank it, pick up the phone, and there it is. But eventually, they connected to other rooms, and then you have push buttons to send them to other people in the office. That starts in the 1920s with these Western Electric wall phones. It's so funny to see a sign that has to explain how to use the dial telephone, but you know, what is it? Anyone under the age of 40 probably never used a rotary phone, right? Gosh, time marches on. Who would have thought a rotary phone being replaced would be the thing that makes us old? Hello?
Hi.
Wow.
Using a dial telephone?
I know, it's amazing. The first time in years. So crazy that that's how it worked. Ooh, now I'm getting the dead buzzer because she hung up. Here's another quick evolution of phones. You start with 1920s candlesticks, and then you move into things that are more modular.
This is the last switchboard in the state of Washington.
And then color. and then the rotary dial phone, and then the push button dial phone, and then the breakup of AT&T, and you could get novelty phones that looked like Marilyn Monroe's lips and high heels and everything. September 18th, 1966, Mrs. Josephine Ryjek, chief operator, pulled the cord, disconnecting the last call placed in the last manual switchboard in Washington state. And here it is.
We're sorry, the number you have reached is not in service. Please check the number or try your call again. This is a recording.
Telephone would have been used way deep in the mines, and it had to be done in a certain way so that it wouldn't arc internally. So that's why you have this big mechanism there to protect it from that. It'd be nice if a lot of companies put that up in their workplaces. See these in antique stores now, these very fancy French looking phones, sometimes with the table built in, and there's your dial on top. This is when off-market companies start making telephones about the time that they're threatening to break up the Bell system. And so the Bell system starts licensing stuff out to other people. And there are your early crank phones. And there's a job I'm glad I don't have. If you are a lineman for the county, well, you might be doing this.
His face looks like he's fallen a few times.
Oh dear, yes. Yeah, rough job. If you're in the area, come see the Telephone Museum. They are open these hours here in Cle Elum, Washington.